Yes, here we go. It is the last football weekend of October. It's amazing how fast it comes by. Johnny Montalbano, Hank Indictor with you. Hank, it's already week 8 in the National Football League. It is incredible how fast. We say it every week. We say it all the time, but it's incredible and amazing how fast this league goes, right?
Oh, absolutely. Like that's literally every single year whenever we watch football.
Well, we'll be 2 months in. We'll be 8 weeks through the season, and we'll see where all these teams land up. But I'll tell you, this year has just been absolutely hard to figure out, not only from the team's perspective, but from the picks perspective. And we'll see what we can do this week, and hopefully get you some winners as we tried to do here. But we're off to a good start now. This week's going to be fun because Hank and I both enter week 8 with similar records: 47, 58, and 3. And yes, Hank, we have actually now transitioned. We are no longer the AFC South of NFL picks. We are the NFC South of NFL picks. But it's just been that kind of year. And I know a lot of people, when you pay attention and listen to sports radio or whatnot, everybody's struggling this year because it's just been that kind of year. But at the same time, it also is a lot of fun. And fortunately, we don't bet. We just have fun with these. But we'll see what we can do for you this week here on the picks. Hank and I also are off to a good start here in week 8 because we both did take the Ravens in kind of a mini upset special Thursday night against the Buccaneers, and they were able to pull that one out 27-22. So, Hank, 14-hour football Sunday awaits us and an interesting game on Halloween night. But are you ready to do this thing?
Absolutely. Let's go.
All right, and here we go, folks, for week number 8. And we get it going with a Steve Levy, Dan Orlovsky, Louis Riddick, Laura Rutledge special on ESPN+. We go to London, where the Denver Broncos take on the Jacksonville Jaguars. So pretty much like a second home for the Jaguars. And Trevor Lawrence, Doug Peterson, and the Jaguars are laying 2.5 points in London.
Yeah, this is one of those games that I just flipped a coin just to pick this one, but the coin landed on Jaguars, so I'm going to go with Jacksonville because I really think they have more potential than the Broncos at this point. They're pretty much the one thing you don't want to be, at least according to Robert De Niro in A Bronx Tale, which was wasted talent.
I'll start you out with a fun fact.
Go for it.
These two teams, they have 9 losses combined by 1 score. So when you look at that, special teams may be critical in this spot, but I look at this also, and I like the Jaguars' running attack with Travis Etienne. And let's be honest, Hank, and we know this from watching the Giant game last week, and if you've been watching the Jaguar games this year, I know you've been high on the Jaguars all season. They've actually been great in pretty much everything except for one thing, and that's winning games. And I think
there is one other thing the two teams both have in common. Terrible coaching decisions, and I mean terrible. I mean Nathaniel Hackett, it's well documented, the screw-ups that he had that pretty much have cost the Broncos, I would argue, at least 3 wins if that even makes sense. Definitely the Colts and the Seahawks game, but I'm sure he probably screwed up at least one other game at least once. But there are 2 blatantly stupid decisions that he made during that stretch. And for the Jaguars, I've never really been that sold on Peterson. I mean, look, obviously you can't get much worse than the last guy that you had. And even with him, you knew he fucked up to a point where you just could not trust him at all. But you look back at the Giant game, he had a bad decision where he didn't even challenge what would have been a first down. And then he explained, I was confident it was a first down, but I didn't want to challenge it. I didn't think it was worth it. Like, buddy, come on. Like, you're a head coach and you don't know the purpose of a challenge flag. I'm sorry. Like, both of these teams just absolutely piss me off because they really should be better. But terrible coaching decisions are what's holding them back, at least in my eyes.
Yeah, but to me, Jacksonville's the better team when you look at it.
I agree.
I think Denver's defense is still very good. Everything we talk about with the Broncos this year has been because of their offense with Russell Wilson and their offense, but their defense is very, very good, and it could make some stops here. But I just like the Jaguar players, and I like their offense. And, yeah, I will say it. I like the coaching staff more, and I like, dare I say, the quarterback better and more in that system. So I'm going to take the Jaguars to win and cover in really their second home, where they've had a lot of success in recent years. So to me, Jacksonville wins and covers in game number 1 on Sunday. It's a Kenny Albert, Jonathan Vilma, Shannon Spake special on the NFL on Fox. Hank, the Carolina Panthers travel down to Atlanta to take on the Atlanta Falcons in a huge NFC South game. No, seriously, a huge NFC South game. And the Falcons are actually laying 4.5 points in this NFC South game.
I'm not 100% confident that they're going to win, but I'm going to go with an upset special here. I think this is going to be a really close game, and it comes down to a field goal. Panthers are going to cover, but I think the Falcons still win.
Well, I'll agree with you on the Panthers covering, but before I get to there, if you think about it, before the year started, this game really had the makings of a huge NFL draft game, and now we're talking about a huge divisional game, and which could be big for a playoff spot for one of these two teams. So it's big in other ways. And just looking at Carolina last week, if PJ Walker plays as well as he did last week, then they can compete in all their division games the rest of the way. And a problem I have with Atlanta is they have no AJ Terrell, no Casey Hayward. So defensively, they're going to run into struggles. So I agree with you that the Panthers will cover this 4.5, but I'm actually going to go take it a step further. I'm going to take full upset special number 1 here. Carolina wins in a very, very close game. Low scoring probably, but close game. And I think they do find a way to pull this one out. And yes, folks, we could be coming back here next week and talking about the first place Carolina Panthers, which is just absolutely freaky to say. But you know what? It's 2022, and there's been a lot of freaky things to say in the NFL season, and that's no pun intended with Halloween coming up on Monday. But Carolina plus 4.5 for both Hank and myself in this matchup. It's an Adam Amin, Daryl Moose Johnston, Pam Oliver special on the NFL on Fox. The Chicago Bears, coming off their unbelievable win on Monday Night Football last week, they traveled down to Big D to take on Dak Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys. And the Cowboys, a 10-point home favorite.
I am going to go with the Cowboys I'm going to take that 10-point Cowboys favorite because, look, Justin Fields, I've been saying for a while, I still think he's decent. I think he really might have more potential than people realize. I just don't think he has a good amount of weapons. And for Mooney and the rest of his receivers and against this Dallas Cowboys defense, it's pretty much going to be open season. Give me Dallas.
So what do I take from the Bears Monday night? That's really the question I look at when I go into this matchup. There's a couple of other ones here too that I look at, but I think this game on Sunday, has the perfect test. Cowboys have the athletes to deal with unpredictability. Justin Fields' decision-making now, look, I've been very critical about Fields this year, but it's improved for 3 straight weeks, as has the defense. Now, the running game, that's been there all along, even with Montgomery, who's been hurt at times. They've had a great running game. And I look at this, and if the Bears want to troll and pull off this major upset special, I think they have to play from ahead early. If I was a true betting man, I actually wouldn't even touch this game because it's a lot of points to lay with Dallas, but I have to, so I'm going to make a pick here. I'm hesitant to do this, but I am taking Chicago plus 10, and it's also because I love Dallas's defense. I just don't know if they have the ability on offense, though, to blow out teams. And last week they did blow out the Lions, but let's also remember the Lions were dealing with numerous injury problems, and if they can get those guys back, I think they're a different team. They're competitive at least, but when those guys aren't there, whether it's the St. Browns or the Swifts, I mean, they're a totally different team. So this is kind of a half bold pick. I'm taking Chicago plus the 10. I'm not going to say they're going to win this game, but I will say they keep it close. Even if they keep it to within 9, that's good enough for me. So Hank will take the Cowboys laying 10. I'm going to take the Bears plus the points down in Dallas in this one. Andrew Catalon, James Lofton, Aditi Kinkobella on the NFL on CBS. Hank, the Miami Dolphins, now with Tua back under center, travel to the aforementioned Detroit Lions, and the Dolphins are 3.5-point road favorites.
Oh, wow. This is definitely 3.5 points. I'm kind of surprised it isn't larger, but then again, it makes sense because the Lions have had games where they can score a lot of points. Ultimately, I just don't think they're going to be able to keep up with Tua Tagovailoa. Give me Miami.
Yeah, the problem with the Lions is If St. Brown, if Swift and Reynolds come back, I think it's going to be great. But I think it'll also be great if you want to take the over in this game. But here's the reality: Detroit's still worst statistical defense in the league. You realize that they're averaging 412 plus yards allowed per game. They're allowing over 6 yards per play, and that's just not going to cut it against playmakers such as Tyreek, Jalen Waddle, Raheem Mostert. Dolphins win and cover there in Big D. And again, second straight week now, I'm picking against the Lions. I was on the Lion train for most of the early part of the season, but those injuries are just getting to be way too much. And even if those guys come back, Dolphins are a different team with Tua under center, and he can definitely make some throws to Waddle and Hill that I think are just going to be too much for the Lions to take. So give me the Dolphins -3.5 in Detroit. It's Chris Myers, Mark Schlereth, and Christina Pink on the NFL on Fox. The Arizona Cardinals, off their Thursday night win last week against the Saints, they traveled to Minnesota to take on the NFC North leading Minnesota Vikings. And Minnesota, a 3.5-point favorite at home.
Another upset special for you. I'm going to go with the Arizona Cardinals just because, once again, I think this is a game where Kyler Murray could potentially carry them. I mean, am I confident in this? Not necessarily, but I don't know. I have to throw in a few upsets in there. Give me Arizona.
Well, the hook also helps you too here at 3.5. I was hoping that was going to come down a little bit for this.
Yeah, no, that's another thing. The 3.5 scares me too.
No, that's fair. All right, let's give you a fun fact. Maybe not a fun fact, depending on who it is. The Cardinals have lost 10 straight games at Minnesota, so they're due. You would say, right? But let's look at some numbers here. Minnesota, first in the league in average starting field position. They're second in opponent's average starting field position. So that already, to me, advantage Minnesota. I also really wonder, is it too early to say what kind of impact DeAndre Hopkins and Robbie Anderson are going to have on this Cardinals offense? Now, look, last week, 42 points. I understand that. But 14 of those, let's remember, were on consecutive pick sixes. And one other thing I look at with Minnesota is our checklist. Primetime game? Nope. National TV game? It's Chris Myers, Mark Schlereth, Christina Pink. They're great, but it's not national TV. Nope. Good. Give me Kirk Cousins and Kevin O'Connell over Kyler Murray and Cliff Kingsbury. Vikings win and cover and make it 11 straight over Arizona in this one. It's a Kevin Harlan, Trent Green, and Melanie Collins special on the NFL on CBS. The Las Vegas Raiders laying a point as they go on the road. Yes, it is a West Coast to East Coast matchup, early window against Andy Dalton and the New Orleans Saints.
Again, I like that this is kind of a pick 'em. It could go either way, but again, based on the pure talent on the roster, I think the Raiders definitely get this one. I don't know how, they should be better than the record they are, and the Saints, in my opinion, are just an absolute mess. And I think Dennis Allen's another likely coach that could get fired. I know it's only 1 year, but he's had a failed tenure before with Oakland. Back when they were in Oakland, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't really put this all on him. The Saints are really.
Oh no, it's not. He had a lot of things out of his control, but it's obvious that he's also kind of way over his head.
Well, the quarterback situation down there in New Orleans is not good. Whether it's Winston or Andy Dalton, going to Dalton again this week. Taysom Hill should be playing more than he is. I know he's been hurt too, but that should be the case. But I'm actually surprised that this line is as low as it is, and it makes me feel comfortable in taking the Raiders, which is who I'm going to take here. But here's why. The Saints have the NFL's worst turnover margin, -10. If you've been watching them also, they seem to be giving up more big plays than any team over the last month. And the Raiders, I think, are starting to finally find their stride offensively. They are averaging 33 points over their last 3 matchups, and that included 38 last week when I had the Texans in an upset special. Didn't work out. But so the Raiders, I think, finding their offense. And how are the Saints going to put up points this week? Michael Thomas, Jarvis Landry ruled out. Marshawn Lattimore, Adam Trautman, their starting tight end, they've been out of practice. We don't know as of right now what their status is going to be. But then you also go back to Andy Dalton again. I'm like, that quarterback situation down there is brutal. And I've been defending Andy Dalton. I mean, he was awful. 3 interceptions last week, two pick sixes against the Cardinals. not good. Give me the Raiders to win down there in New Orleans and keep their hot streak going, which they need in that AFC West. So the Raiders win over New Orleans is the pick here. Well, this has been a game that's been talked about a lot this weekend for a lot of reasons. It's an Iron Eagle, Charles Davis, and Evan Washburn special on the NFL on CBS. Hank, the New England Patriots travel to MetLife Stadium to take on the New York Football Jets. And I know the controversy with our Jets fan Nick Morganson, because he makes a good point about this one too. The Patriots are laying 2.5 points going into MetLife.
I don't know how you can favor New England in this game. They are an obvious mess. And if you didn't think the Empire was dead maybe a year ago when they had that playoff appearance, but then got smoked by the Bills, well, now after getting clobbered by the Bears and then them getting into a full-out quarterback controversy with two quarterbacks who I'm not sure are really the long-term answer. I mean, but then again, to be fair, is it really that easy to replace the guy who was your primary starter before you and Tom Brady? But the fact that Bill Belichick let a controversy like that happen with like starting one guy and then putting the other in later, that tells me that I smell a rat. And I mean, make no mistake, the Patriots will still probably find ways to win games, but this is the first time in, do I even want to say a long time? Because I don't know if there's ever really been a time that I could say that the Jets were confidently going to win a game against New England. Give me the Jets.
So one of my bold predictions before the season started was the Patriots are going to be the worst team in the AFC East. I still believe that. I'm actually surprised that Bill Belichick actually named a starter this early. I thought he would have waited until game day.
And make no mistake, Bill's made some pretty crazy moves over the course of his years, but more often than not, like if you look at some of them, like going forward on 4th and 2 at his own 20, that at least made sense because he didn't really want to give the ball back to a Colts team whose offense was historically good.
Yeah, but man, believe it or not, Hank, this is a game that I struggled with picking wise.
Really?
It took me a little while, and let me tell you why. So I told you, to me, the Jets are still better than New England Patriots, and they've got them right where they want them. Well, that's the narrative, and I get it. But here's the problem I have from the Jets side when I look at this matchup. Their top wide receiver, out. Their top running back, out for the season. Their top offensive lineman, out for the season. And Bill Belichick's teams usually play their best against the Jets, and especially coming off that awful game on Monday night. See, if I had to really guess, I would have actually started Bailey Zappi at MetLife Stadium, but that's neither here or there. I think, so all those guys being out for the Jets to me actually works in New England's favor, and I know they gave up 33 points last week. This defense is still very, very good for New England, and as bad as they've been, it's been mostly on offense, and it hasn't even been really Mac Jones' fault. I know he played awful last week, but those guys being out, and especially against this defense, I think is worrisome. And also, let's also remember one thing too. I know the Jets have won these last 2 games, but I think we need to see more out of Zach Wilson. And until I do, everybody in the Kid Brothers taking the Jets, so I'm taking New England laying 2.5 in this spot. And even if they eke out a field goal win, if this comes down to who has the ball in the last 2 minutes, and Nick Folk, the former Jets, kicking that field goal, that's a winner. So New England laying 2.5, that's the pick for me against the New York Jets. But I definitely could also see a spot here where the Jets win this because they are better than the Patriots talent-wise. But I just think I really wonder now with Davis being out, how much Breece Hall is going to be missed in this offense. You're going to go to Michael Carter. I get that. And I know they just brought in James Robinson last week from the Jaguars. And Vera Tucker being out, that could be something. And especially as the Jets start entering a very challenging part of their schedule here, that could be worth watching. But I also just have this weird feeling with New England that they're going to bounce back. And Bill Belichick wants to beat the Jets in the worst way. That's something else I have too. And it's only 2.5. So even if, as I said, New England sneaks out, let's say a 27-24 win, that's a winner. So New England laying 2.5 is who I'm going to take here. And I hesitate to take this one too, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to take New England to win and cover at MetLife Stadium. It's a Jim Nantz, Tony Romo, Tracy Wolfson special on the NFL on CBS. It's a Pennsylvania showdown as the Pittsburgh Steelers go to Philadelphia to take on the still undefeated Philadelphia Eagles. And Hank, the Eagles are laying 10.5 points at home in this matchup.
Eagles laying 10.5, eh? Well, you know what? I'm going to take that because I think Philadelphia is clearly head and shoulders the better team. I mean, you look at the Steelers, like Kenny Pickett has gotten off to an absolutely horrid start. Now, granted, is it really his fault? I mean, look, more often than not, I think the team around him just isn't great, and I think the Steelers, all those years where ownership's kind of like been complacent and letting a defensive system be the thing, it's kind of coming back to hurt them, and I don't know if they can keep up with all the firepower the Eagles have on offense, and of course those jerks just had to trade for Robert Quinn, like because they needed yet another dominant pass rusher just to like show off and prove that they're the best team in the NFC. Now, are they? That remains to be seen, but I will say and give you another factor for why I'm taking Philadelphia. Mm-hmm. Pittsburgh has not won a game in that city since the 60s.
Wow,
in other words, they've never beaten the Eagles at the Vet, and they've thus far never beaten them at the Link.
That's an amazing. That's not a fun fact. That is an amazing fun fact. Put that as a new graphic too. There are fun facts, and then there are amazing fun facts. So you got the Eagles to win and cover. So let's look at Pittsburgh's side here. They're weird. They're
1965.
Wow, interesting. Yeah, I think that only continues here. So the Steelers, every loss except the one to Buffalo has basically come down to the final possession, and then look at their game against the Bucks, and that was missing pretty much their entire defense. Still no TJ Watt, a lot of their secondaries being out, but Philadelphia had coming off their bye week, and they prepare for a Steelers defense which has been just generous to receivers, and I think Jalen Hurts is going to exploit that. And the Eagles come in with the best turnover differential at plus 12. And let's also not forget James Bradbury, Darius Slay. They've become the best quarterback tandem in football. I think I could easily see the Eagles winning by 2 touchdowns here. So give me Philly to win and cover in this one to close out the early window on Sunday. It's Greg Gumbel, Adam Archuleta, and AJ Ross on the NFL on CBS. The Tennessee Titans, who have now won 4 straight, they go to Houston to take on Davis Mills and the Houston Texans, with the Titans now laying a field goal in this one.
Give me the Titans. Better team right there, probably the best of what really isn't a great AFC South.
Yeah, it's getting better though, because now you've actually got an over 500 team, and last week you had a matchup of 500 teams, which we didn't think was going to be like that at certain times this year, but now now the AFC South is better, and the NFC South is what the AFC South was. But as far as this matchup, the Texans cover train, I think the train has come off the tracks there, and all of a sudden Tennessee 4 straight wins, in which they've covered it all 4 times, and Derrick Henry, he's finding his form, 3 straight 100-yard games. And the Texans have allowed 164.7 yards per game on the ground, Hank. That is the worst in the league. I think this is a golden shot here. Even with a little bit of a banged-up Ryan Tannehill, he's not going to have to do much. It's going to be really all Derrick Henry. Titans go out to an early lead. They could run the ball with Henry and go from there. And the Texans have been kind of competitive, but not here. Even last week, you know what? When it looked like Davis Mills had a great game, their defense takes them a step back. So I'm done picking the Texans plus the points here. I'm taking Tennessee to win and cover to start the late window on Sunday. It's Brandon Gaudin, Robert Smith, Jen Hale on the NFL on Fox. It's Taylor Heineke and the Washington Commanders traveling to Indianapolis to take on Sam Ellinger and the Indianapolis Colts, but it's the Colts laying 2.5 points at home.
Again, this one kind of feels like a pick 'em but the reason that I'm going to go with the Colts is because sometimes it happens when a quarterback makes his first start, like they don't really have film on the other guy. So I think Erlinger might have a good game and maybe give the Colts a little bit of false hope. I mean, they still have a chance at winning that division. I mean, because like I said, the division's pretty shit, but at the same time, it's probably just going to be a false hope win for the Colts, only because I'm still not sold on the Commanders, even though the Commanders did get a big win in Green Bay. So give me Indy.
Yeah, Jonathan Taylor being back, and he looked good last week, which I think is going to help Ellinger out. And I just don't like the matchup though for Indy. You know, you look at the Commanders; they've got somewhat of a pass rush, and the Colts don't have any pass protection. And I just look at the Colts, and I think that their offensive woes are just at more than one position. And I looked at Washington. One thing I noticed last week, and I said this to Nick when we did the picks last week, I think they're playing with confidence, and I think that's going to go a long way here. And confidence and the Colts should not be used in the same sentence here. I'm taking Washington plus 2.5 in this matchup. And what probably I'm thinking is going to be kind of a close one, but I do like the Commanders to win their third straight plus 2.5. We took them last week against the Packers. We're going to ride with them again. Commanders plus 2.5 in this matchup in Indianapolis. Kevin Burkhardt, Greg Olson, Aaron Andrews, Tom Rinaldi on the NFL on Fox. An NFC West showdown as the San Francisco 49ers go to SoFi to take on the Los Angeles Rams coming off their bye week. The 49ers are laying 1.5 points.
I'm going to go with the Rams because I think they're due to win a game against San Francisco sooner or later. And, you know, the Niners are kind of on a bit of a slide. I'm not sure what to make of them. And even though I do think they could have easily gotten better with the trade of McCaffrey, I'm just not 100% sure. I just feel like it was too much of a desperation trade at that.
That is fair. Yeah. Let's look at the Rams here. They were talking about a team that needed a bye to reset their team. That's the Rams. But a team that really needs this game to me is the 49ers. And I think Christian McCaffrey is actually going to benefit from another week with his new team. Now, let's look at history. I don't like to look at history, even though we've done that with a couple of games here today. History's on the side of the 49ers. To me, the location of this game is absolutely meaningless. We've seen that in history's past. But to me, this Rams team is the worst that it's ever been in this matchup, and there are question marks all around. How are they going to be coming off that bye week? That offensive line is not good at all. I like this defense for the 49ers. I know they struggled last week, but that was against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, and I know they were banged up defense too. It's 2 straight weeks. I think this is a spot for the defense to get right. I think this is a spot for Christian McCaffrey to break in with this new team. I think Jimmy Garoppolo bounces back, and I'm only laying 1.5. That's good enough. 49ers to win and cover in LA in this matchup. Hank, it's the game of the week. That's what I'm calling it.
Let's hear it.
Yep, it's Kevin Kugler, Mark Sanchez, and Laura Oakman on the NFL on Fox. The New York Football Giants, America's favorite team. Well, America's best. How about America's best story? Let's roll with that. They are 6-1. They go to Seattle to take on Geno Smith, Kenneth Walker III, and the Seattle Seahawks. And it's the Seahawks who are favorites by 3.
Wow, this is a really tough one. And by the way, can I give you a fun fact?
Please do.
The only game this week with both teams above 500.
That is why it is the game of the week. And yes,
imagine telling me that was going to happen before the season. And oh man, as much as I would love to pick the Giants to continue to go on that winning streak, and I wouldn't be surprised if somehow they found a way to pull another close win and give us heart attacks while doing it in the process. My thing is, I just have a bad feeling that they're due to lose a game sooner or later. Seattle is not the easiest place to play, and they've had trouble stopping the run, and I think that's going to be a big factor in why I take the Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah, great points there, and I know I spoke to you before we started here. This feels like the first real road game the Giants have been on in I almost want to say since the start of the season, because the game against the Packers was a neutral site game. Last week in Jacksonville felt more like a home game with more Giant fans there than anything. But I think this is actually the first real true test for the Giants. And what I mean by that is with the adversary they have, the injuries now that they're dealing with, with Evan Neal not being there. And yes, the Giants got very fortunate that was not a season-ending injury with him. But Evan Neal not being there, Bellinger not being there, who's probably been he's been the best rookie tight end in the league this year. I think that is a big deal. They're down 2 offensive linemen. I know DK Metcalf's injury is going to limit Seattle's offense, but we saw it last week. The best way to attack Wink Martindale's blitzing defense is to run right at it, and we saw that with Jacksonville last week. I think this is going to be a great shot for Kenneth Walker III. That's the guy I'm really scared about. I'm not even scared about Geno Smith. I'm scared about Kenneth Walker III. And, you look at it, his past 2 weeks, he leads the league in rushing yards with 265, which, fun fact, most rushing yards by any player in his first two career starts since Todd Gurley in 2015. It's a tough spot also going to that 12th man environment in Seattle, which now all of a sudden has a lot of real life. This game before the season started, I thought was actually going to be a tough game for the Giants because this was one to me that I felt like Seattle could sneak away with a win. But now I think it's for legitimate reasons. So even if they lose 22-20, that'd be nice, but I don't think it's going to happen. I am also taking Seattle to win and cover in this game of the week with the two teams over 500. So Seattle to win and cover, we both agree with, and hopefully we're both wrong with, in Seattle to finish up the 4 p.m. Eastern window. Sunday Night Football on NBC. It's a Tarico Collinsworth-Stark special, whereas the Green Bay Packers travel to Buffalo. Aaron Rodgers and the Packers take on Josh Allen and the Bills. Not a typo. The Buffalo Bills are laying 11 points at home.
I wouldn't be surprised if the Packers somehow managed to edge it with the cover just slightly, but do you really think I'm going to be picking against the Bills? No, give me Buffalo.
No, I think the only question mark you would have, Hank, is just does Green Bay cover? Do they have a backdoor cover in them? I don't think so, because something that we've documented before, who is Aaron Rodgers throwing the ball to? There's just nobody there. Lazard's hurt. I think Cobb's hurt. I mean, they don't really have many options. And so who's Rodgers throwing the ball to, and how the heck are the Packers going to stop the Bills? You realize the 2 games that Buffalo's had at home this year, do you know what the final score combined of those 2 games have been for the Bills at home?
What was that?
79-10. And I think it's more of the same here. And here's another fun fact for you. This is the first time that Aaron Rodgers, the 2-time reigning MVP, is a double-digit underdog. First time in his career. And it's not going to be pretty. Buffalo wins big time on Sunday night. So give me the Bills to win and cover on Sunday Night Football. Monday Night Football on ESPN on Halloween night with Buck, Aikman, and Salters as the Cincinnati Bengals travel. Well, don't go far. They go to Cleveland to take on the Browns, and it's the Bengals who are laying 3 points in this matchup.
Wow, that's going to be a tough one, but I'm going to go with another upset special. I have a weird feeling Cleveland Browns are going to win, but especially because the Cincinnati Bengals are dealing with injury problems, and it's just another year of the post Super Bowl loss hangover. So give me Cleveland.
Well, I wonder now, the last 2 weeks, can we say that the Cincinnati Bengals are back? The win against the Saints, the big win last week against the Falcons. The Jamar Chase injury is, I don't think, going to be much of a big deal in this matchup. I think it could be down the road here. But to me, Cleveland, it's another dream matchup for the Bengals taking on this Browns team. And as long as Zach Taylor, I think, keeps Joe Burrow passing on early downs and Burrow finds his form, which, let's be fair, Joe Burrow has played outstanding these last couple of weeks. I think it's hard to imagine this Browns secondary lasting 4 quarters against this team. And I don't think they're going to miss Jamar this week. Here's what I would say for the Browns. A lot of tricks, no treats on Halloween night. Bengals win and cover on Monday Night Football to wrap up the week for week number 8 in the National Football League. So speaking of Monday night, let me just give a quick plug here. On Monday night, our buddies over at Empty the Bench. We could also, I guess, say on Monday Night Football, it'll also be a Nick Morgeson, Nick Federa, Tom Albano special, as they will be doing a live stream over on youtube.com/ETB network. They'll have they're going to do a Halloween night live stream of that Monday Night Football game. So if you want some fun while you're eating your candy or whatnot, if you're still in costume and still in uniform, go check those guys out on Monday night on youtube.com/ETB network for Monday Night Football live stream. So Hank, we'll see what happens with this week. As I said, this league, it's very, very hard to predict. We'll see what happens with all of our picks here, but it should be a fascinating slate of games. We'll see where our football team is going to be as we turn the page to November, the month of decision-making in the National Football League. So next week, we'll have all that. We're also going to have next week the first official college football playoff ranking. So that'll also be part of our Monty moment coming out later on next week. So we certainly a lot of football as we enter into the month of November. We'll see what happens here. So Hank, enjoy your football weekend. Let's go Big Blue.
All right. Sounds good.
So for Hank Indictor, I'm Johnny Montalbano. Enjoy your weekend, everybody, and we'll see you next week.